Hi. I'd like you to put your hand up if you own or live with one or more dogs. Great. Now keep your hand up if you don't own or have access to on a regular basis a private car. Yeah, I thought so. You see, here in Sydney, we love our dogs. Around 40% of Sydney households has one or more dogs. But here in Sydney, dog ownership is a pretty car-dependent affair. One of the reasons why is because we maintain this peculiar and increasingly outdated notion of prohibiting pets on public transport here in Sydney. Yep, Sydney's public transport's trailing the pack again. Most cities in Europe, in South America, increasingly in North America, even in New Zealand, you can take your dog on a train, bus or ferry without much of a problem. Now, you might be looking at me and thinking, you crazy academic from the University of Sydney, no less, why don't you research something serious? Pets on public transport? You are barking up the wrong tree. Sydney's public transport system, it's a dog's breakfast, don't we all know it? Go and research something serious. But just bear with me. First of all, there's the obvious. If you have a dog, you need to get the dog to the vet, and you don't have a car, you're in a spot of bother. Like this person once told me when I did an interview, the vet is not within walking distance of our house. Our dog got hit by a car. There's a bus that could have taken me there, but I couldn't take the dog on the bus. That dog died. And yeah, that's really sad for that dog owner and of course for the dog. But there's something about how prohibition of pets on public transport that is actually really relevant to us all. A few years ago, I did a survey of around 1,200 Sydney dog owners. I wanted to know about the travel that they did, and truth be told, I was expecting to get a heap of data on dog walking. But what I found out really shocked me. We love to travel with our dogs. We go everywhere with them. We take them to the shops, to the pub, to the dog park, school pickup, drop-off. But if any of those trips are further than what we or the dog can walk, we have to jump in our car. In fact, I found out there are 2.4 million dog-related car trips in Sydney every single week. But you know what? It goes even further than those 2.4 million trips. Sydney, it's about the message that we're sending to Sydney-siders about what public transport is for here in Sydney, about the types of trips that we can use our public transport system to do. You see, I've got this theory, right, that public transport in Sydney is pretty good for predictable, or what I like to call clean trips. You know, the journey to work if you work in the city, origin, destination and return. But in reality, our lives are really messy. Yeah, we do the journey to work, but we cart kids around, we do the shopping, we go to the doctors, we visit family and friends, we go to the dog park. And when it comes to that mess, our public transport system just doesn't really cut it. You see, Sydney, letting dogs on public transport is just one easy to implement, relatively inexpensive way that we can send a message to Sydney-siders that our public transport system is world-leading and up to the standard that is required for the mess of modern lives in cities. All right, you say, let's do it. Let's let the dogs out. Let's run with the big dogs. Come on, beagles on buses, terriers on trains. How about a foxy on the ferry? Yeah, but what next? How'd we go about this? I think the first thing we'd have to do is anticipate some of the complaints we might get. I've done research on that too. A little while ago, I did a discourse analysis of all the negative comments I'd received to a piece published on a popular academic social media site. And I think the comments can be summarised with this. What the authors are overlooking is that dogs, all dogs, stink. But seriously, I get it. Dogs are really polarising, right? There were legitimate concerns like the smell. What about the risk of dog attacks or aggressive dogs? What about allergies, cleanliness, the fact our system's already pretty overcrowded at times, and the cost? Who's going to pay for it? Certainly not going to be the dogs. There was also this emergent, really interesting theme that Australian dogs were somehow more aggressive, bigger, more unwieldy than their sophisticated metro travelling smaller European counterparts. I then did a survey, this time of Sydney dog and non-dog owners, and it was a representative sample by household size, income and geographic distribution, and I found that about 77% of Sydney-siders either agreed with the policy to have pets on public transport in Sydney or really couldn't care less. Now, I think the next thing that we'd have to do is look to other cities that have done this and it's worked smoothly. Not wanting to be hot dogging myself, but I have done some research on that as well. I did a review of public transport policies in cities where they allow pets, and I found that there are plenty of things that we can and really should do if we're going to welcome dogs on public transport in Sydney. There's lots of ways to regulate this. Most cities will have spatial restrictions. For example, you can only take your dog on a certain train carriage or in a certain part of the bus. There's often restrictions around dog breed or size. Usually you have to buy a ticket for the dog. There are time of day restrictions. You can't take your dog on peak hour, for example. And this is the most important one. At all times, just like human beings, if the dog is behaving badly or causing discomfort, they can be asked to leave or refused rite of passage. Now, Sydney, letting dogs on public transport may take some cars off the road. It will bring the joy of companion animal ownership to Sydney-siders without making them go out and buy a car to do so. Most of all, it will send the message that our system is up to scratch and able to accommodate messy lives. Yeah, it comes with risks, but Sydney doesn't anything that's worth doing. Come on, Sydney, it's time to let the dogs out.